Another distressing week. Well, I guess our content's always been somewhat distressing.
Yeah, it was distress that drove us to this whole thing.
True, yeah.
We've been trying to do the best of it that we
I
could.
think we have quite a lot of joie de vivre, things considered.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tanner.
I'm Sam.
Welcome to another episode of Zelf on the Shelf.
Today we're diving into Russell Brand.
Ooh. So I have kind of stayed ignorant of everything going on. I feel like we do a good job of balancing our hyper focuses.
Yeah, it's not fair for us both to have to research these things every time, yeah.
But you've been going hard researching Russell Brand.
I wasn't sure if we were going to do a video on this, but I was curious when I heard about the allegations because I, historically, have been a big Russell Brand fan. Like the film Forgetting Sarah Marshall growing up was one of my favorite films as a teenager. Russell Brand is an icon in the UK. Like I grew up with him. I've always loved that he has, this thick working class accent and is a genius.
Is he from around Essex? For the record, I don't think I've ever seen any Russell Brand movie.
He's born in Grays. Okay, he's born in Grays. I'm from basically the same. I mean, he's from Essex. I'm from Essex. Grays is right next to Basildon, which is where I'm from. So yeah, I think that's another reason I've always loved him.
So it's your responsibility to take on someone from hometown.
Just a sort of a bloke from Essex, from a single parent family. That's a pretty comprehensive show off.
Fellow citizen of the United Kingdom, of the Commonwealth of England, this is your duty.
Yeah,
to
and
the
as
crown.
a Brit in America, as he has been. We got a lot of crossover.
Today, I think we're going to have a little discussion about...
Yeah, great Russell Brand.
There's going to be a lot of Russell Brand coming out of me today.
And
it's all going to be bad.
Need that for the relief.
It's going to gradually transition into Little Orphan Tanny.
So I heard about these allegations coming out, and it seemed like as soon as I became aware of them, the discourse was very much focused on, isn't it a bit weird that he's immediately been demonetized from YouTube, which demonetization, while not like a complete ban, it does have somewhat of a deplatforming effect in that YouTube doesn't push videos to people as much if they're demonetized. So just worth noting.
Does he have a robust Patreon?
I don't know if it's Patreon. He's on Rumble, but yeah, he has other methods of distribution and a big loyal fan base. So it did, I'll admit, seem a little bit strange that the minute these accusations came out, he was banned from YouTube or demonetized from YouTube. And that seemed to be kind of like dominating the discourse. So I was like, I'm just going to go in with an open mind. As I said, I've historically loved Russell Brand. I watched his YouTube channel religiously until about 3 years ago when I feel like he just got more political and I just wasn't really interested in that type of content. Like I liked his more like mindfulness, spiritual, interviewing Eckhart Tolle content. But I've still somewhat thought of him fondly. Like a few months ago, he did a yoga video with Adrienne that I did. And anyway, yeah, my opinion of him has generally been good. And he's been very open about the fact that he has a checkered past and that he was an addict. He was addicted to heroin, alcohol, I think a lot of things. He's openly talked about how he was a sex addict. And so in my mind, I was like, I'm just going to go in with an open mind. Like maybe it's a situation where there was some questionable stuff in his past, which, he himself would say. But, let's just find out what these allegations actually are. Let's just go through the allegations based on what I learned and... I just want you guys to know what they actually are because I think it's easy with stuff like this to sort of be peripherally aware of what's going on. And if you're not truly aware of what the allegations are or you haven't heard them from the mouths of the women that gave them, you don't always know, I am in favor of listening to women who come forward with sexual assault allegations. And obviously, as we know, it's rare for women to lie about that. But I also think it's good to give people a fair trial and, stay open-minded about everything because he is a public figure criticizing these powerful industries. So, who knows? That's kind of the mindset I went in with.
We don't know who the women are, right? It's still fairly... They're anonymous people who have come to the press but not made public statements. And I can, as someone who is exactly as you described, sort of peripherally aware and kind of been like, whoa, this is interesting. I remember watching his YouTube and, the Eckhart Tolle one, being like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
But then as time went on, I'm like, that dude is so charismatic.
So charismatic.
And that's not automatically a red flag.
No.
But I was like, something about him, I just you can say the past is the past. There's something in it that makes me feel like he's still the same old Russell Brand, even if he's not on heroin, even if he's not on coke. I just eventually was just like, I'm not really interested in following. And as you said, it's got more political things. But it's been interesting to watch. And then being like, okay, well, there's these allegations. Immediately he's demonetized. We don't know who these people are. This is complicated, right? Sort of like with the Tim Ballard thing that's going on right now. There's a lot of reasons, like very legitimate reasons that people don't want to come forward. Most people don't want to like subject their lives to the type of public scrutiny for the whole global stage to be focused on you and what could be the worst trauma of your life. It's hard enough, like, voluntarily stepping into the limelight just to discuss controversial issues and having like tons of people who will malign you and say all kinds of things about you, let alone someone who's already been through an ordeal and doesn't want to like, no one wants to like go through a legal proceeding, you know what I mean? Like, even if it was like, well, then why don't they take action? And there hasn't been a suit. Why isn't there a criminal?
Let's address that right away before you carry on, because there was there's a number of different allegations. Like, a lot of women have come forward. I just want to like say this up front. I just deleted my entire note.
You can shake it to undo.
Yeah. You never do that?
No.
Yeah. Hot tip.
I've lost so many notes that way.
I took notes on my phone based on the Dispatches documentary. So as I understand it, it's only available in the UK right now. I listened to a podcast called On Brand where they played the clips and like basically went through it. These are my notes of the timeline, so there is a chance I like have made some little mistakes here, because it was like, as I was going about my day yesterday, I was trying to take these meticulous notes. But just to address like the anonymous thing, so this was an investigation that Dispatches, which is a Channel 4 like documentary endeavor, I suppose. I grew up watching a lot of really good Dispatches documentaries. Like, I remember growing up, just if a new Dispatches documentary came out, like I knew it was going to be good. Like, it was going to be like a deep dive. It's like good journalism. It's just my historical impression of Dispatches. If you're from the UK, I'd love for you to weigh in throughout this, by the way, on this kind of stuff. But Dispatches by Channel 4 and The Times and the Sunday Times collaborated on publishing this investigation, in which 4 women alleged Brand of sexually assaulting them in separate instances between 2006 and 2013. And this ranges from like kind of intense sexual harassment right up to rape, these allegations. And I will also say that it has been like known in the industry apparently for years and years, despite Russell being apparently sober since I think 2002, that
really?
He shouldn't. Yeah, I know. It's way longer ago than I thought.
Was it September 12th, the day he came into work dressed as Osama bin Laden right after the
He was
attacks?
probably still an addict then.
He said he was, so it must have been just shortly thereafter, because I think he got fired from things after that.
Yeah. God, free speech and comedy. They're really clamping down. You can't even go dressed as Osama bin Laden the day. We don't have time to get into that. So
that's not even related.
Anyway,
it's just
outside of this investigation, these reports, I mean, Russell Brand himself has been open about the fact that he's been a massive sex addict in the past. He's even described his own behavior in his books as rapacious. And he's done bits in his stand-up specials about like forcing a woman to give him a blowjob while she's crying with mascara running down his eyes.
Really?
Oh, and also I raped someone once.
Like, he's been pretty open about his promiscuity and also how much he hasn't in the past respected women. When I watched his YouTube channel, which again, I kind of stopped a few years ago watching it religiously, he would talk openly about how he used to not respect women properly and how the way he engaged in sex was like not cool and, like was spiritually demolishing him and all these things.
And then he's like, couldn't be me.
So the impression I had of him was like, yes, he does have a checkered past and I'm sure he was a creep and, harassed some women, but he seems to have atoned for it. That was my impression. So let's just go through the 4 allegations that are in this documentary. And just so you know, this was an investigation that they spent, I think, 3 years doing. Whoa. They spoke to around 500 people. Oh, sorry. Going back to my point of like, it's well known in the industry that he's a creep. For example, like when he was being, I think it was, they were considering him for another season of Big Brother. Oh no, I think it was for a different show. They were considering him for a show And basically someone in the room raised the fact that like, oh, but he always will like sleep with people on set, you know, like people on the staff, and he causes problems with his womanizing. And the suggestion was put forth that like, we just won't have any women on set who will have to be alone with him at any point. Like things like that have just been kind of like the environment around Russell in the industry, because he is this like super talented, hilarious, popular comedian who people want for their shows because he's going to bring in money. But it's been kind of well known. Like he had to have a clause in his Big Brother contract that he wouldn't sleep with anyone related to the show, which you would kind of think would be like a given maybe but it was like a specific clause put in there with him.
Whoa.
There was a comedian who spoke in the documentary about how like everyone in comedy knew that Russell was a creep and that women should avoid him. Apparently among female comedians there's like a bit of a sort of group where they will share names of people to avoid, because comedy can be full of male creeps, to be real. And Russell's name was like fully on that list, and yeah, it was just well known that women should kind of avoid him.
Yeah.
So that's just some. Oh, another piece of context I just want to give before we get into these allegations, because I think it's really important. And he's written about this in his own books, is that his dad was like hugely problematic and gross. So his dad would have sex with sex workers with Russell in the next room. He bought Russell his first sex worker when he was 14, and they would each be having sex, I think at one point in like the same room, but in like different beds. And Russell wrote in his book about how the noise from the other bed was like distracting him. His dad also exposed him to porn from a really young age. Like he would have these women over, sex workers or otherwise, to have sex with, and would like give Russell porn to entertain him. So I just want to bring that up, that Russell was like, that is like sexual violence as far as I'm concerned, for a father to, you know, like force their kid to watch porn, or, you know, hire a sex worker for them at 14. Like those things aren't cool. So it's not surprising to me that he has issues around all of this.
My dad didn't even give me the talk. I can't imagine if he had shown up and been like... I would have
screamed at my parents if they tried to give me a talk. I would have been like, no! So, you know, when I imagine like how traumatic, whether or not he realized it or not, that would be to have in like a relationship with your dad growing up.
If not traumatic, certainly gives you
like that informing your sexuality in a critical period of development. It's not surprising. Mm-hmm. Anyway, let's get into the allegations. So I think most of the women were anonymous, but they're not anonymous to the journalists.
Right.
Like the journalists still had to go through their due diligence to like corroborate the reports, as with, you know, good journalistic integrity generally. It's like a source can be anonymous, but they need to still provide to the newspaper or to the journalist like evidence enough. You can't, good journalists don't just like print anonymous quote. That's like Daily Mail shit, you know?
Right. It can still be verified. They can provide documents or whatever to prove like, hey.
First situation, Russell's 31. He's coming out of a building in London, like some TV studio, and there's this 16-year-old girl who the documentary calls Alice. I think it was her real voice. That for some of them they used like an actor to relate, which I totally understand, because if you're a woman speaking out against Russell, I mean, he's got the best lawyers in the world, he's got tons of money, he's got so much power and influence.
A rabid fan base.
The number of people we had in our comment section calling us groomers and pedophiles for criticizing Tim Ballard was significant, let alone being one of the actual women who are accusing a powerful figure like these of
much more renowned than Tim Ballard.
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't want to come forward with any of this. But anyway, there's a girl who's leaving this TV studio who they call Alice, and she is 16 at the time. I think the age of consent in the UK was 16. So like technically he wasn't going to go to prison for this. That's just some important context.
Great. Well, if we're off on a technicality,
yeah.
I saw Ben Shapiro being like, scuzzy behavior? Sure. Illegal? No. It's like everyone is all against groomers and, you know, predators until there's a person with, you know, legitimate accusations.
Yeah. So basically she's carrying like a Topshop bag full of clothes because she'd like gone shopping on her lunch break or something. And Russell says hi to her and's like, what's your business being here? And she's like, oh, I don't know, I just had a meeting, can't remember. And then he was like, oh, I'm giving like a loose paraphrase of what happened here. But he's like, what's in the shopping bag? And she's like, oh, you know, stuff I bought today. And he's like, you're going to wear that dress on a date with me. And she is 16 and he's Russell Brand and she's like very flattered. So she, you know, agrees to go on a date with him. It's not coercion because she's agreeing to go, she wants to go, but he's a 31-year-old man who's famous and she's 16, so that's obviously an important power dynamic. They start dating. She's a virgin when they start dating, and when she tells him this, that seems to like really delight him, and he like cradles her like a baby. Throughout the relationship, he refers to her as the child. She describes it as like a relationship that started consensually, you know, but that she quite quickly felt controlled, which is generally...
Hard to imagine how that would play out.
In general, I don't imagine why a 31-year-old man would want to date a 16-year-old girl other than for her, you know, naivete and being easy to manipulate. So he's very quickly like love bombing her, like telling her he had a dream that they had kids together and just all this stuff that to a 16-year-old girl you could imagine feeling very romantic and fairy tale-esque, and you know, he's giving her like advice on how to lie to her parents. He's doing the classic sort of groomer thing of trying to isolate her from her parents and from her friends. At one point, her mother found out about the relationship and made her like text him her age. I think he already knew her age though, because she described it like, I think at their first dinner, he was like, he made some comment like, I don't care if you're 12 years old, I just need to know that I'm not legally gonna get into any trouble. So I think 16, he was like...
He was aware.
Fine. For some reason, I thought that if someone was over 18, the age of consent was 18, not 16. But if anyone knows, please comment below. She describes him as being like very obsessed with her innocence and purity. He made her read Lolita, which
what is Lolita?
It's a book that was like really glamorized on Tumblr in like 2012 about like a much older man dating a child basically, and it like really glamorizes it. Male author, of course.
He made her watch all the Woody Allen movies.
God. She also talks about how she was vulnerable because she was recovering from an eating disorder. I mean, being a 16-year-old girl, as anyone who's been one, like it's a very vulnerable time. And if you have had like no experience with sex and dating, you know, you're going to be very vulnerable to someone like Russell Brand, who's been a huge womanizer his whole life. This was in 2006, I believe. She talked about how he sexually assaulted her one time. Like she was at his house and he forced his penis in her mouth and she was like choking and gagging and like crying and she couldn't get him off her because he's obviously like bigger and stronger than her.
6'2".
Yeah. And so she ended up having to punch him in the stomach to get him off of her. There was an incident she told about how she was at his house and he was like, I'm going to run you a bath. He runs her a bath and then he's like, I've got to go. You stay in the bath till I get home. Like, do not leave the bath. And she said he was gone for so long that she started getting cold. So she got out of the bath and like put a towel around her. And she was like, well, as soon as I hear the door go, I'll just quickly get back in. And so she did that. And he was like thrilled to find that she had like stayed in the bath despite being cold for him. It's almost like he's trying to play out these BDSM fantasies with someone who's too young to even know how to really say no.
Literally just about being able to control somebody.
Yeah, it's so then it's not consensual, you know.
I like that joke you used to do. When you were at school and like loads of boys with cars come and pick up the best looking girls from your year, and you think that's not fair. All the best looking girls in our year are going out of 26-year-old men. But now that I am 26, I see the beauty of the system.
And then, this is kind of a grim fact. There's a lot of grim stuff in this. When the relationship was finally, he was wanting to end it, the way he ended it was by texting her and asking her to come over. And when she got there, he was in bed with another woman. And that was the way that he ended it with her. So just like degradation right to the end. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. That's a common thing with him.
It's hey, child baby, I'm here with my new lover. Yeah. You can get right out, scram.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a common theme. A lot of the women describe instances of Russell being with another woman when they come over, or like him inviting them over and then there's another woman there and like trying to get them to have a threesome and then getting angry if they don't. Like that seems to be very much Russell's vibe. And I don't know, like, the ins and outs of, you know, how the journalists conducting this investigation, but I'm guessing they're not getting all the women in a room together so they can corroborate a story. They're, like, individually reaching out to, or, you know, the women, whatever.
Yeah.
So, that's Alice. She was 16.
Jesus, we're
interesting
off to a rough
fact.
start.
I know. So, she worked in TV. That's, even at 16, she must have been doing, like, an internship, or who's to say. But she, years later, I think it was like 2020, she's the one who described the, I don't know what you'd call it, but like a meeting at a TV studio where they're considering Russell for something, and they have the idea of not having a woman have to be alone with him throughout the production process. And she, at that time, tried to call, she just thought that was like outrageous, right? We're like banning women from the set, or, you know, we're making women
so feminist. We're not going to hire any women who are allowed to work on the set so that we can have Russell Brand. Because we love women. Behavior. We're going to protect them by not hiring them.
Yeah, so she, at that time, you know, she's older, more with it now, and obviously, like, the Me Too movement has happened, and so I'm sure she had a lot more context for her experiences. She called Russell's agent, I believe it was, and was like, I want to talk to you about the fact that your client is a sexual predator. And she basically just received a bunch of legal threats, like intimidating her.
Whoa, from Russell or from the studio?
Well, it's through his people, but everything has to be signed off on by Russell because, you know, if a lawyer's sending you an email, they're going to have to bill you for that email. And so it's all signed off on. Another thing, you know, he forced her to take his penis in her mouth.
He raped her.
Yeah, that's rape. And she had mascara running down her face from that incident. That same year, he did a comedy special, you can watch the clip, where he talks about how he loves when mascara runs down a woman's face while she's giving him a blowjob. So it's harrowing imagining being, you know, a girl who experienced that, and then he's celebrated on an international stage for making jokes about it. In 2007, I think, I didn't take many notes on this, but there was a newspaper article printed in the UK about Russell, based on the fact that a woman had come to them and like told her experience. But in the final printing of the article, they removed the bit about him assaulting her. And so they just painted it as like, Russell's a misogynist, but they took out the fact that the woman mentioned assault. That's just a little detail. In 2012, there was a woman who Russell raped in LA. Like, they were, I believe, friends or friendly, and he invited her over to his house and raped her against a wall, basically. And then afterwards, she was like, what the fuck? Also, another detail, all these women described this, like, dark look that would come across his eyes. Like, they all separately described that, or most of them, that like his eyes would almost go black.
He's already got shark eyes.
Yeah. And so that's just a detail, but he raped this woman, and she was like, what the fuck, because they were friends, and she was like saying while it was happening, like, don't do this, like, you're gonna, you know, we're friends, like,
Jesus.
She actually did go to the police after this happened. She went to the rape recovery center where they like take the sample. So there was like full documented, like, I think they like freeze your underwear, or I'm not sure the specifics, but like his sperm is like frozen in that case. Like they have that. She did go to the police. So this idea that like all these stories are anonymous, this woman went to the police.
What became of that?
Nothing. So she decided not to press charges because Russell's so big and famous. She just didn't want to go through that. So
it would be hell going through.
It's so much more likely, just if we're being like thinking critically, it's so much more likely that a woman who is sexually assaulted or raped by Russell wouldn't want to press charges because of his fame, rather than a woman would want to make up charges because of his fame. Because the chances, it's very difficult to get money from a man for rape. I guess you can maybe get like tabloid money or something, so there's that. But
and also the like anonymity here goes against one of the accusations that's levied against women who come forward, typically women who come forward against abusers, is that they're just doing it for the fame or the money. And it's like, these people don't want attention. They just see something happening, which is a person who abused them. getting to live the high life and getting to be the changed Messiah who now just gets to preach spiritual messages on YouTube.
And like,
That was a bad
do
one.
I think there are women on planet Earth who might lie about rape? Yeah, everything exists, right? But like, in general, there's no glory to be had in your entire like life essentially being reduced to you were raped by a celebrity. Do you know what I mean? Like, as a woman, I can't imagine anything worse than like that's the thing I'm attached to forever.
Right.
I mean, actually being raped, you know, is got to be horrific enough, let alone on top of that. And also, any celebrity is always going to have diehard fans that will go after you for it. Like, it's never going to be
even them alone, even just them and the legal retaliations.
Let alone all the people that...
An increasingly hostile and politically divisive fan base.
There was also a woman who worked with him who talked about... And by the way, I'm going to link the podcast that I took all these notes from in the description box. I didn't love the podcast as a podcast. I felt like the audio was a bit shit. I didn't really like the host dynamic, but the information is good and like I respect the work they're doing. So I want you to have like if you can't get dispatches because you're not in the UK, I want you to be able to listen to this yourself. But we're just kind of doing a summary here. There was one woman who worked with Russell and was his friend, and like they had slept together before, but just one time. And at this point they were just friends and co-workers. And I think this story really illustrates the way that people like Russell, it kind of takes a village to enable them. So she came over to his house because she had like left some stuff there. They had gone to do a shoot together or something. Anyway, she came back, she was at his house, and he started like chasing her around the apartment. And at first she's kind of like laughing because, you know, they're friends and it's nothing. But then he's getting like really serious and he's like grabbing her and like, you know, acting as if he's gonna rape her. And she's like, what the fuck? You know, because again, they're friends. I think this is the story I was mixing up with the rape one, so I'm sorry about that.
When you have so many instances of rape that it's hard to keep track of them.
It is hard.
God.
But moral of the story, she ended up getting away and he wasn't able to rape her. And then she just, and in her saying no and resisting him, he yelled, "You're fired!" Because she worked for him. And then when she came out, there was like a bunch of people from the show they'd been working on that were like waiting in the driveway who had heard the whole incident through the window.
Whoa.
And one of the guys that was standing there years later said to her, "I'm so sorry I didn't like step in and do anything. Like all of us just like didn't know what to do. We were all like stunned." But it's all like they all know that Russell's like that. But their livelihoods depend on it, and it's very much, you just won't keep your job. If you know, you can see how there was this whole culture around him because he makes a ton of money for all these people. He's like stupidly successful and powerful and rich, and charismatic. And so yeah, she got away, but you know.
That reminds me of I did hear a thing about the 16-year-old that he had sent a cab to her school to pick her up.
Yeah, that was Alice. So that cab driver, when he was picking her up at the school, I think the driver had her in the car because she tells the story. And the driver said to her, "Please don't do this. Like, I have a daughter your age and I would want someone to tell her this." Like, because, you know, he's a dad. He obviously knows who Russell Brand is and how easily a 16-year-old girl could be taken in by, you know, someone that charismatic. But she at the time was, you know, really taken in by him, and she was just like, "You look sad," and didn't care. But then there was the other story was, so there's this girl, she's a showrunner for Big Brother. She's young. I think she's 18-ish at the time, like out of high school, but very young. This is like her first real job. So she really wants to make a good impression, and her and Russell apparently he liked her, like they got on well. So basically the other staff on the show, if they needed to like tell Russell something that they knew he wasn't going to take well, they would have her do it, which is a little bit questionable because again, she's like 18, they know, or however old she was, they know he has this reputation for being,
You're going to be our buffer for the predator.
Well, exactly. And she describes the situation as, again, you can go listen to the full account on Dispatches or in the podcast, but she basically describes how she felt groomed for sex by him ultimately, because I think in the end he did try to sleep with her. I don't think anything happened because she turned him away, but yeah, she's just like this little innocent showrunner, and he's, you know, like kind of coming on to her the way he sort of, I mean, and even comes on to Brene Brown a bit in like their interview, but I'm like, she can handle it. She's Brene Brown.
That was my turning point with him. Who was I watching him interview? And he was just like hitting on her the whole time, but like not in a fun, flirty way. I was like
going too far.
I was like, you're like disrespecting a professional who has like a lot of really valid commentary to say by just like always seeking that low road of like trying to wiggle in there.
Like Brene Brown, she liked it, I think,
turned me off.
Yeah, when you're supposed to be into it.
I'm gonna go back and find who that was, because I was like, ooh, I did not like this at all.
There was also, this is just a weird side note, there was this murderer called Ian Huntley. I think I'm remembering his name right. I remember him being a big deal in the UK growing up. Yeah, Ian Huntley was, he murdered 2 10-year-old schoolgirls in 2002. I remember this being a big deal growing up. Like, God. Yeah. And their names, what were their names? They were like, he's one of the most reviled pedophiles in Britain. Okay, their names were Holly and Jessica, the girls he killed. And one time, this is just 2 other girls that were interviewed as part of this thing. These 2 girls or women were having a threesome with him, and I can't remember what their names were, but their names kind of sounded similar to Holly and Jessica.
Oh, no.
And Russell, during the threesome, started making up a song about Ian Huntley, which I feel feels very in line with him, you know, coming to work dressed as...
during sex?
Bin Laden, was it?
Yeah.
The day after 9/11. So yeah, he's a fucked up man. His relationship to his sexuality is... I mean, he's a rapist. There's multiple... I mean, he raped Alice. He raped the woman who reported it in LA. And
she had text receipts too, like saying, I did see this, where she had gone to the rape recovery center and had texted him, when a girl says no, she means no.
Yes, I'm glad you heard that. So this is another interesting piece of it, is it seems, and I just find all this interesting given that he has given the impression that he's like reckoned with his sex addiction over the years and reformed, and as far as I know is like a family man now. The fact that he's like denying all these allegations, I mean, I think if you truly want to atone for things like this, you can't deny them. Like, you have to own up to them.
Do we have any case of someone just being like, I did that, I'm so sorry, I'll do whatever it takes to make it right?
I almost feel
Has that ever happened?
Because I just think there's no, rightfully so, there's really no coming back from being a rapist in the eyes of the public. So he knows. I almost get the feeling that, like, even if he has reformed, he has to deny it no matter what, or his career is over. Yeah, because this is like I don't think people who reform should like necessarily be allowed to continue having a public platform. But like, to me, if someone is truly has changed and is super upfront about everything they did, then I believe in forgiveness, not in necessarily platforming them or giving them a mainstream television show or anything like that, but I'm like, it's probably useful for us to hear from voices like that. Like, I could see a world where I wouldn't be opposed to him being on YouTube if he truly did own up to this stuff and made reparations and, you know, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But he's not. He's like maligning these women and...
Isn't that how it always goes, double down?
Yeah. Sorry, this has been a little bit all over the place. It's like, it is tough to keep all the stories all do have like so many similarities that it genuinely is hard to keep together.
Sorry to keep returning to Tim Ballard, but in these investigations that these journalists do, a common pattern emerges where you're like, and I think for a lot of women who may consider themselves an isolated instance, who aren't privy to what that guy is doing in other spheres, when they hear a similar story, they're like, wait a second, that same thing happened to me.
So that's the thing. I think it was Alice who said that. She was like, oh no, actually, it might have been someone else. One of the women in the Dispatches documentary talked about how she thought they had just kind of had a bit of a weird relationship, but didn't, I think it was Alice, because she would have had to have been young to not realize, but just like didn't realize that this was just like how he was, you know, across the board. Apparently it took the journalists, like these weren't women who were like eager to come for. I mean, if you want to make money, your best bet, I mean, especially in the UK, would be like going to the tabloids, being willing to have your face pictured on the front of the magazine, looking sad.
Sell them a compromising photo or something.
It was like a years-long effort for the journalists to even get the women to feel comfortable enough to, well, some of them told stories in their own voices, some of them, guys, we just realized that our audio for the next, I think 10 minutes, maybe 5, I'm not sure, cut out, so we're gonna have to just have the camera audio for this section. I'm so sorry, our equipment is really old, and support us on Patreon if you want us to upgrade, but the audio will come back, so stay with us. Really sorry. Well, some of them told stories in their own voices, some of them told them and then had an actor recreate them, but either way they are like giving away who they are to some degree or another, at least to Russell. And and also it's like, it's not just like the 4 main allegations, it's all these other, women that have had sex with him consensually still report like him making up a song about paedophile during sex and like all this other stuff. There's not anyone that seems to have an account of things just being normal with him. Also, I think when he first dated his wife, she was really young.
Like Dane Cook's wife. They started dating the day after she turned 18.
Yeah. When he was first dating his wife, she was 18.
Oh.
When they first started dating, his wife was 19 and he was 30, which doesn't have to inherently mean there's a power imbalance, but like, it's very in line in this story with the fact that there is. And then they stopped dating and then they dated again in the future. And that's just an interesting fact.
So this is something that's been building for years. It's not like all of a sudden big media is trying to shut down Russell Brand.
Well, and again, he has described his own behavior as rapacious in his own books.
He's like, I was always on coke, I was always on heroin, but I never did anything wrong. No, sir, I just did illegal drugs. That was it.
I don't really understand why people are so convinced he's innocent when like all the evidence is there. He was like openly a raging drug addict for 8 and a sex addict. Like I know that apparently like sex addiction isn't like officially in the DSM or anything, but when you hear the accounts, this is what I meant to talk about. It really does sound like an addiction in that it seems like this like sort of force comes over him, and I don't say that to like minimize the fact that like it's his responsibility to control that. But there's a lot, and maybe this was all just for PR, but there's a lot of instances where, for example, he like almost raped his friend and co-worker and then sent her a text after that was like, I'm so sorry, like that was really shitty, like he seems to have these, and again, this could just be for PR because he knows he's famous and it's not gonna look good, but there was a number of the women described how afterwards he like really did try to apologize to them, and I don't know, maybe I'm just like an optimist, but like when I heard some of the apologies, I'm like, it sounds like there's like something genuine in that. I do think it's possible that he had this like really fucked up relationship with his sexuality, again stemming from when he's a teenager and his dad is putting him in these really fucked up situations, and it was this like addiction for him, again just because all the women describe almost like this glazed look coming over his eyes, and it's almost, you know what I mean, it's like there's a different energy taking him over.
And I mean, he like very young skyrocketed to fame, right? And surely had like just a lot of access, and
this is obviously not
was just accustomed to like doing whatever he wanted.
That's the thing, the whole media environment, even as recently as 2020 they were considering, let's just not have women in the room with him. So
and not to be the like the pedophile liberal Hollywood elites, but Hollywood, you know, they're not known for not creating this environment.
100%, yes.
Especially comedy, when you have people like Woody Allen, Jerry Seinfeld, who dated a teenager in high school when in the middle of shooting Seinfeld. This is all.
There were things that were a bit more normalized when I was growing up than now, like a 16-year-old dating a 31-year-old, obviously not cool, but I can picture, like I could see a universe where I might have thought that was romantic as a 16-year-old growing up, and I could see that there almost was this like acceptance of, well, of course male celebrities are gonna like date these beautiful young women. I don't know, it was just, it wasn't like quite okay, it was starting to become not okay, but like it's definitely, we've come a long way. Like Me Too was significant.
Oh, can I just Tim Ballard tangent again? Did you see that they're like let me get the official title.
Oh.
Operation Underground Railroad's chief legal officer resigned from her position at Operation earlier this month. She says, "I stand with survivors no matter who, where they
go
are.
on,
Hashtag
queen.
me too."
Chief legal officer, eh?
Yeah.
Love that for her.
That she's basically saying these women were assaulted.
Yeah. Also, I know this isn't a video about Tim Ballard, but it's all kind of interconnected. The Vice reporters said this in their interview with Mormon Stories, and by the way, loved that interview. You should go watch it. They're so clearly like journalists with journalistic integrity. Like, we're not journalists, but we did do comms degrees, and we had to take a class in journalistic integrity and like media law and ethics, so we know like some stuff. Like, I know what good journalism entails and from like a integrity standpoint.
Not that I practice, but I see witness.
Tell, don't show. But you can tell that these are like boring journalists who laboriously stick to protocol, you know, which I love. But
respect.
One of the things they mentioned, because Tim Ballard's like latest justification for these sexual misconduct allegations is sometimes for the mission you got to do things that are tough. Let me explain what it meant to have a wife, and just all this bullshit. And what the Vice reporters said, which is so spot on and well said, is that it's so insulting to these women to suggest, these women who were fully in on the mission and totally knew they were going to have to do things that they were uncomfortable with and go to strip, all that stuff. It's so insulting to them to suggest that they didn't know the difference between something that was for the mission and something that was harassment from Tim. And there's a reason it's like 7 women and not 1, you know, it's not just like one time someone got the wrong idea and like thought something was more real, but it's actually for the mission. It's like, no, it's clearly a pattern if 7 women are coming forward. And he was fired from his own organization, which I'm sure was like heavily...
After an independent legal firm investigated.
And they had every incentive to be biased towards him. It's his organization. And like, I mean, it's kind of like us researching the Mormon Church, where we had all of our bias was in favor of the church being true, and then we still realized it wasn't. Like, that really says it when that's the situation.
It's giving Teal Swan hiring the private investigator to determine if she's a cult or not.
And then she like wakes up from the cult through the... Yeah, that was brilliant. I loved that. Yeah, because she was a Teal Swan follower, wasn't she?
Or, you know, at least interest.
No, she was.
Oh, wow.
She was like pro Teal.
Wow.
Anyway.
If you're wondering who the hell is Tim Ballard, what are you talking about? Go watch our episode.
I think people, he's been on the map.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is insulting to all the women to suggest that they didn't know. Like, you don't need to shower with a woman as part of the mission. You don't need to send her a picture of you in your underwear saying how far you go as part of the mission. All that stuff.
It sucks how everything gets politicized, but everything is political. All art. And when people say don't politicize things, what they're saying is it's like a sort of passive acceptance of the status quo, and whatever politics are playing into the status quo is, you're just sort of consenting to that, I guess.
Really well said. I want to touch on the criticisms that, you know, maybe these allegations are just coming out about Russell as essentially a hit job on him because he's speaking too much truth to power, he's thinking too freely, and he's threatening these big, giant industries.
We saw it with Donald Trump when they tried to make him look like a rapist by publishing an audio recording of him bragging about sexual assault. They just can't, they hate seeing someone take on the government.
It's also interesting because it's like everyone can tell from Russell's own words that he, bare minimum, by his own admission, has been like a sexual harasser in the past. Like, maybe they don't believe that he was a rapist the way that he was, but bare minimum by his own admission is that he has absolutely sexually harassed women. And same with Donald Trump. I don't get why for so many people it's such a big leap to suggest that, you know, they're also a rapist and that when there's accounts that they are.
You don't get the reputation as a womanizer for just dating a lot of people.
And it's also, I feel like a lot of the time, kind of passively saying it's kind of okay to sexually harass, and that doesn't necessarily indicate anything negative about your character. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, look at the culture we're coming out of, where it's like negging and harassing is like upheld as like, this is how you get a woman. You insult her and you wear her down until she literally can't say no anymore, and then you marry her and then she's your housewife for all eternity.
Russell Brand in his own book talked about, like, described how he would wear women down to sleep with him. Donald Trump in that audio recording talked about how he would non-consensually kiss people, and it's almost like a lot of people that defend that are saying those things aren't that bad. Like, that's what I get.
That's just boys being boys.
Yeah, it's like, even if you don't believe the other stuff, like, is that alone not concerning to you? I don't get it. and then you'll rail against like Hollywood elites, and it's like, again, you're part of the problem. Like the very thing that you claim to be so against, it seems like you're only against it when it's among people that are not on your side, which means you don't actually care about the problem, you're just using it as a weapon, which is like kind of chilling. But anyway, I want to touch on the idea that maybe this was a hit job on Russell, because I really did go in thinking like, maybe, like...
I definitely like raised an eyebrow when I saw that he was demonetized. I was like, you know, not a fan, but what's that about?
Despite what our right-wing haters or whatever might think, we actually are like very, I'd say, strong advocates for free speech. Like, you know, that's a value we really uphold. But that being said, well, I don't really know what to make of the demonetization thing, because people are like, oh, he's been demonetized without a fair trial. But it's like, this was legitimate journalism. It kind of makes me think of, like, as in where they did their due diligence and like all the boxes have been ticked in terms of like corroborating these accounts. It makes me think of the Tim Ballard situation where John DeLynn, Mormon Stories, interviewed the Vice reporters who broke the story about Tim Ballard being fired from OUR for like 7 women accusing him of sexual misconduct. And John asked them some question about the allegations against him, and one of the reporters stepped in and was like, just so we're clear, these aren't allegations, these are established fact at this point. Like, this went through like the Utah Department of whatever, like, confirmed it, and you know, it went through all these channels to confirm that it is fact. And again, I would recommend watching that interview, because they talk in that interview about like what a journalist has to go through before they can publish something like this. And again, obviously something like the Daily Mail, they'll just publish whatever. But Channel 4 Dispatches, The Times, like, those are reputable journalistic organizations, and they can't just like publish based on hearsay. They do have to corroborate, and there's a reason this investigation took years, and Russell's been speaking truth to power for years, you know, like they could have published it 2 years ago if they just wanted to do a hit job or whatever. But it seems like they really did their due diligence.
On the note of free speech, as fans and advocates of freedom of speech and of the press, we have to remember that that's like our right that we're given by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, is about the government censoring people and the media from freedom of speech. It's not saying every single private platform has to publish and monetize every single creator no matter what.
Exactly.
Like, YouTube is still a private an enterprise that can decide what it wants to do. And I'm not saying that in any case, Russell Brand or otherwise, they're always doing the right thing. It's like, I'm sure they had some big meetings about it, and they went through the evidence and were like, okay, we don't want this. That isn't an imposition on the freedom of speech, right? Because that's not the government stepping in and saying, we're not even giving you a trial, you're not allowed to speak anywhere. Like, that would be insane tyranny.
You know,
but that's not what's happening.
Is an imposition on free speech is Donald Trump banning the EPA from using terms like climate change. And do you know what I mean? Like, that is an actual example of free speech being curtailed. A few thoughts I have about whether this is a hit job on Russell. First of all, I listened to the allegations. I don't think it sounds like a hit job to me. Like, they all paint a very cohesive picture, like women that are describing different instances. There's enough threads of similarity that make sense. It's all very in line, again, with things he's even said about himself. I cannot stress enough. Who describes their own behavior as rapacious in a book? Ugh. But yeah, for me personally, having listened to the women's accounts in the documentary, like, I believe them. And again, it's been widely known in the industry for years that he is predatory and, you know, will sleep with people on every single... Not that sleeping with a lot of people inherently makes you predatory, but it has been known that he is predatory. Like, this wasn't new, again, even by his own admission. And he describes himself as a reformed sex addict, and I'm sure, as with drug addiction, though, you know, you can make arguments that they are obviously different, I'm sure if what I imagine a sex addiction to be is that it is like your behavior is entering a territory that is, do you know what I mean? I imagine, yeah, exactly. It's going beyond what's like normal and healthy. And anyway, so I do believe that he is a rapist, sadly. I did a little dig back into his YouTube channel again after a few years. I've only like very vaguely watched his stuff over the years. And I was so surprised at how right wing he's got, and how his entire comment section is Trump fans. Like, it seems like his base at this point is people that love Trump. Like, he posted an interview with Marianne Williamson, who we've talked about. Like, there are things we like about Marianne Williamson, and I appreciate him, you know, kind of platforming someone who's not sort of a mainstream candidate.
Sure.
And the whole comment section is just hating on Marianne Williamson because she dares to criticize, but because she criticizes Trump. And something I thought was so interesting is, okay, so for example, Russell did this video where he was criticizing, Big Pharma using this clip of, it's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris talking about, I think it's part of the Build Back Better initiative, but basically how they've made it, the Biden administration, to their credit, for all their many faults, like, we're not Biden fans here, but they capped the price of insulin at $35 a month. That's something Trump didn't do, that they were able to do. They have made it so that basically it starts with like 10 medications that have no competitive generic version. They've made it so that Medicaid or Medicare, I'm not going to be an expert in how I talk about this, but they've made it so that Medicare can like negotiate prices to get lower prices for people. And basically like the top 10 drugs that older people are dying because they can't afford, they've made it so that the cost of those drugs is going to be lower. And as part of this plan, there's like more drugs that will be added to that list every year, but they like started with the big 10. And Russell Brand's like criticism of all of this is basically that this is still like really watered down. Like, Big Pharma has still clearly had a say in watering down this bill because Americans are still paying way more than like European countries for these drugs, even with the lowered prices. And that's true.
Valid.
And yeah, and this is the thing with Russell Brand, is like he has in the past been like quite a champion for working class people, and I've really appreciated, he went through this period where he was on the British news a lot, really like challenging these, what do you call it?
Just traditional capitalistic.
Yeah, like crony capitalist narratives,
Sure.
or just standing up for working people basically, and like cutting through the bullshit. And so again, used to love him. So in this video, he's criticizing Biden and Harris because clearly Big Pharma kind of got in the way of this bill being better. Like, it was originally supposed to do more. And as is always the case in American politics, lobbyists get involved. But I just thought it was so interesting because the whole video, he's criticizing Biden and Harris, and all of his like followers are Trump loving, but it's like, but Trump didn't do anything to lower the cost of medication or cap insulin at $35. And while I completely agree that like Big Pharma watered down this bill and that's fucked up, the way that they did that is by, number one, like basically every Republican voted against the bill. And is it Joe Manchin? How do you say his name? Joe Manchin was like single-handedly the reason that certain like cool stuff didn't go through. And he's like technically a Democrat, but like in name only. And in this video, like Russell Brand doesn't even bring him up. He's just like blaming Biden and Harris. And it's like, it's Biden and Harris like only have so much power. If they can't get
Biden
Joe
just
Manchin,
signs it, and he'll sign the
like,
best version that comes to the desk.
Exactly. Like he doesn't have the power to just be like, yep, now all drugs are cheap, as far as I know.
He's not writing the bills.
So it's so interesting because Russell's like presenting this video as if he's like being informative, but all he's doing is kind of like mocking Joe Biden and Kamala, but he's not talking about like the actual series of events that took place that watered down that bill. He's kind of just acting like, oh, he criticizes the Democrats a lot. He's like, the Democrats are in the pocket of Big Pharma, and it's like, yes, but like the Republicans are no less in the pocket of Big Pharma. Like, they donate to equally, depending on who's in power. You know what I mean? Like, they might give more to the Democrats on a year that they win, and but it's
and the overall like conservative philosophy behind it is to deregulate, to let the big business run its course without interference by the government.
Yeah. So why have you got an issue with YouTube deciding?
I know, right?
So I just think it's interesting because all his content is like right wing in that it's right wing people that are watching it, and it seems like the sort of single focus is criticizing Democrats, but a lot of the time Russell is criticizing them for things that the Republicans have an even worse stance on. Like, the Republicans are not trying to lower the cost of prescription drug prices. Or, you know, Trump was in office for a full 4 years. What did he do to lower the cost of insulin? Nothing. How many Republicans voted for the bill that you are criticizing for being watered down? None of them. So I just, like, he's very confusing to me. And that is what makes me think he's pandering. And that, because he's always been like an anarchist, but in the past, Russell Brand has, again, like, been, I think he's historically, like, campaigned for Labour in the UK, which is our, like, more progressive party. But now it's just so weird. It's like he's using his knowledge and understanding of issues in, I would argue, like, quite a nefarious way, because it's, again, like, all of the comments are like, yeah, fuck the Democrats, but it's not moving people towards any... It seems to just be making people double down in Trump. And again, the issues that... It's just weird, do you know what I mean? Because the Republicans don't want universal healthcare. But, like, Russell Brand is, like, criticizing the Democrats for, like, not being universal healthcare enough. And so then everyone in the comments is like, yeah, fuck these people, fuck the Democrats. But then there's a disconnect, you know?
Yeah, to borrow John Mulaney's metaphor, it's like you can look at a hospital and be like, oh, there's a lot of problems with this hospital. But the solution isn't to send a rabid horse into the hospital to break all the machinery and totally disrupt it so that it's non-functional. That doesn't help what the hospital is trying to accomplish. And that's what the whole Trump populist movement is about. It's like, oh yeah, let's let the most unhinged, unprincipled person who, again, openly bragged about sexual assault and is a known womanizer, and we don't have to get any more into Trump, but like, that's not doing it.
You know, there was that tweet that said, you know, Russell's pivot to right-wing content makes more sense
once the allegations come out or whatever.
And I'm like, maybe there's some truth, just because it really does to me seem like he's too smart for the type of content he's now making. Like, I've really noticed his delivery just isn't what I think of him as someone who's, like, got an incredible grasp of the English language and is, like, very tuned in with humor and, you know, like, systems thinking, and he just isn't that right now. He's just like, that guy looks old, you know, just, like, making fun of people's appearances and, like, making fart jokes, and, like, none of it is what I, like, loved him for in the past. And I don't know if he, like, I don't think he calls himself right-wing, but it's again, he interviewed Marianne Williamson and everyone in the comments, like, doesn't like it. So it's like every, like, shred of progressive values that he has, when his audience doesn't want them. So it's almost like they've just gone away, and it makes me sad because, again, I think it's noble to criticize Big Pharma and to talk about, like, let's talk about how this bill got watered down. But it didn't get watered down just by, like, Joe Biden sucking. It got watered down because there's, like, a Democrat in the Senate and all the Republicans who is so paid off by Big Pharma that he didn't vote for it. Like, that's the issue. You're not providing any value by just, like, shitting on Kamala and Joe in that situation.
Stoking the tribalistic fire of Trump versus Biden.
Yes, and, like, Russell Brand is someone who, again, in the past, I loved for sort of his perspectives that he would give on sort of mindfulness and spirituality. I really resonated with, and I felt like he really understood the importance of, like, going beyond tribalism and recognizing the interconnectedness of all. And now I'm like, who is this person?
Are we watching just the most high level playing out of the New Age to alt-right pipeline?
Yeah, I know, but it's...
Which is the more I think about, I mean, this isn't a new phenomenon. We've seen it playing out for a while, but I get kind of increasingly scared about it.
But it feels, to me, so much scarier because a lot of the time with the people that are, like, New Age to... Oh, right. I don't really get the sense that they are like particularly intelligent or good at critical thinking, but Russell Brand is someone who I have seen be capable of incredible critical thinking.
Scary.
Yeah. So it's like, is that just the does it all just come down to like money and influence, and he's just kind of willing to pander, or has he had like a genuine unawakening? Like, I don't really know. Again, we are like we're happy to criticize Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Big Pharma. Who's the other people he criticized? I don't know. All these people that are so powerful that they've apparently deplatformed him with these fake allegations. Like, well, first of all, lots of other people criticize those things and don't get deplatformed. And it's like, of course Russell Brand's a rapist, like, sadly, when we think of it. And he may have reformed. Like, he probably doesn't rape people now, but if you're still like saying that the women are lying, then you're still part of that in some way. You're still tied to it.
I said I was only peripherally aware of this issue now. In the course of this, I've realized how many like TikToks I've heard about this subject. But I did hear a woman, and I'm sorry I can't remember her name or the relationship, but she attended one of his seminars or retreats or thing where everyone's showing up and meeting, and he's at the front of the stage doing his thing. And as part of it, he was talking about his sordid past and all the negative things he did. And then he invited all the men in the room to come up and share the worst thing they have ever done. And she was like, it was not like a healing space with remorse. It was like everyone talking about the worst thing they did at like stag parties, and in a very like, ha ha ha,
like,
isn't
lads.
Literally.
Oof.
And not in a way of like, this is us trying to sincerely atone, but like, oh, we've all done shit, ha ha ha, welcome to the boys club.
That's very interesting that was his impulse, like, to just get all the men to say the bad things that they've done.
And she said it was truly, truly horrifying, like some of the most rancid shit she had ever heard.
I also heard that Russell used to, I don't know if it was like part of a stage show he did or a TV thing, but there was something he did where there would be like a contest winner every time, and apparently his show staff were like instructed to always pick a female winner, and it was common that he would have sex with them afterwards in their disabled toilets.
Whoa.
Again, stories like that have just been like in
brewing for years.
Hollywood, in media for years. Like, he's been known as that, but yeah, so none of this isn't an out of the blue thing. I guess I'm just thinking Bernie Sanders. Like, we haven't heard anything to suggest that Bernie Sanders is sexually abusive. So it would be kind of, if we did hear that would be like, whoa, that's kind of come out of nowhere. Maybe there's a case for the fact that this is a hit job because he really is,
Yeah.
But
I am somewhat cynical after 10 years of just digging into the most awful things going on in the world. Like, I regularly practice offering up my heroes. Like, I'll be like, Ram Dass, sexual abuse scandal, just to find, and I can never find anything about him, because it's like, I think because people like, oh yeah?
Well, no, not him himself, but I do think he was like maybe a bit complicit in like another guru.
Oh, in Bhagavad Das?
Probably that guy.
Oh, that, we should do an episode on this, because that guy is whack. The documentary Carmageddon, go watch it. These types of people who have done things and then curate this public idea that it's a witch hunt, right? That's the word that goes along. It's never about women who have been falsely accused as witches or doing something wrong. It's women who have had something done wrong to them who are getting now blamed for conducting witch hunts.
In calling it a witch hunt, you're acknowledging that it was never fair that these women were tried as witches, but you're still like so part of the same rhetoric that like led to, literally
stealing like that traumatic narrative.
You can't take that from us.
So bad, but kind of giving this idea that, like, it's not safe for men these days. Women will try to break down anybody. Women are after men to lie and deceive. And I have found myself kind of been like, oh, like, what if, it's hyper. But then it's like, the women I actually meet in real life are, like, totally, it's fine, It's like, it is people who are doing bad shit. Like, people obviously talking about doing bad shit, describing their sex life as rapacious, bragging on, record about sexual assault, who are now like, it's a witch hunt. And also, it's not like your average guy who's like, just being defamed for no reason. Like,
and when it's just these types of situations, like Russell Brand, Tim Ballard, just used the two most recent examples, it's not just like one unhinged woman trying to have it's like numerous you know what I mean? It's like all these women are not, it's so different when it, as I said, like everything exists. So in theory, if we have a system where we just are, you know, default to like, let's believe women when they tell their stories, of course there are going to be like nefarious actors who will kind of use that social policy to, you know, get revenge on a man or what, like it's possible. But it's like, these are situations where, I mean, this dispatchers thing with Russell Brand was 4 stories on top of the many, many others that were peripheral to it. The Tim Ballard thing, it was like 7 women. And they all describe similar tactics.
I don't have this statistic off my head, but what number is greater? The number of women who are found lying about a sexual abuse allegation versus men who have done something bad who are actually A, taken to court, and B, given any amount of justice.
Yeah, like we know from the data that it's very rare because it's not fucking fun. Like you'd have to be like very not right in the head to want to like lay yourself on that altar, because it, especially with a celebrity, like they're going to come after you, people are going to come after you, like you're throwing yourself into the lion's den. Yeah, so it's not.
Oh yeah, a defamation lawsuit alone.
Yeah.
Like good luck.
Yeah, good fucking
with
luck.
A fucking multimillionaire, I assume. He's probably very rich.
Oh
right?
yeah, multimillionaire. Doesn't matter. Should we wrap up here?
Let's do it.
Maybe we'll talk about Russell Brand again as this story develops.
I didn't even use my Russell rebrand joke.
Yeah, it's not like it.
I'm sure people have been doing plenty takes on the name Brand.
Yeah, I mean, like the podcast I listen to is called On Brand.
Yeah.
If you liked this video and want to support our channel, we are on Patreon where we post bonus videos. We're reading a 80s Mormon fiction book right now about a girl called Stephanie who is a drug addict. And that's a fun time. Anything else you want to say? We also have a candle, which is banana nut bread and coconut, and every candle that is sold plants a tree in an area that helps with restoring habitat for orcas. So that's just a fun way you can enjoy hygge season and support the orcas.
We love the orcas.
We love the orcas.
Also, hop on over to our Etsy store. We got merch.
We do have merch, yep. All right.
Thanks for watching.
Great time. Please let us know what you think in the comments. If you have any information we didn't share that you think is relevant, please let us know. Like, we want to be informed. If we made any mistakes, let us know.
Okay, bye.
Bye. And sorry about the audio thing.